I am an orientation and mobility specialist.
I'm a lawyer.
I'm a firefighter.
I'm an advocate.
I'm a sister.
I am a mother.
I'm a friend.
I am me.
I have bipolar disorder.
Depression.
On borderline personality.
I'm not embarrassed.
1 out of 5 people lives with a mental health condition.
We're all people, and if we talk about it, there's hope.
Hello, I'm Karl Shallowhorn, board member of the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition. And on behalf of the coalition, I would like to welcome you to the 10th in our series of Facebook Live events, this time focusing on the state of stigma, keeping communication channels open for high school students. The high school years can be some of the most challenging for youth. The shift from interdependence to independence, puberty, peer pressure, and the ever-present expectations that's placed on them by parents and caregivers, teachers, and society creates a significant amount of stress for young people. In addition, the recent impact of social media and COVID have exacerbated this stress, which for some youth manifests in the form of mental health related concerns. So today we're going to explore this topic with 3 individuals who have different perspectives. Before I introduce our panelists, here are a couple of housekeeping rules. Our program is for 1 hour. During this time, if you have a question or comment, please type it in the text box and we'll respond accordingly. Today I'm joined first by Ann Mansin, coordinator of the Lancaster Family Support Center for the Lancaster School District. She's held this position since the inception of the center in 2000. The center is an integral part of the social emotional support services they provide in their schools and the community. In her role as a coordinator, she works with students and families that are struggling with social emotional issues and helps to remove the barriers to seeking help. As a lifelong resident of Lancaster, it has afforded her the working knowledge of the needs of their students and families and advocate for the mental health resources that can provide assistance. She's also been a member of many mental health committees and initiatives throughout the years to advocate for mental health awareness in schools and to help educate the importance of it. Next, we're joined by Lisa Benedetto. Lisa is a licensed clinical social worker with 21 years of social work experience. She works in an educational setting serving public school students, staff, and families. Her work includes crisis prevention and response, grief and loss, and suicide prevention. Her job also includes consultation and staff training. Lisa currently serves on the West York Board of Directors for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And finally, we have Oliveluneske. Olive is a 14-year-old Hamburg High School freshman. She holds a freshman ambassador appointed position at the Hamburg High School. She's a pre-professional dancer studying dance at the Future Dance Center since the age of 4. She travels and receives recognitions for her talent, and in addition, she has participated in Taekwondo, soccer, and basketball. She serves as a chairperson for the Hamburg Coalition for Equity and Inclusion, run as a student-led club at Hamburg High School. She's also a member of the Youth Alliance for Education run by UB, the University of Buffalo, and participates in the Nature Club. Olive is open about her mental health challenges and is dedicated to being a voice for peers who live with similar issues. Welcome everyone to the Facebook Live event for today. So I'm going to start with a question for all of you, and maybe we'll just start with Lisa. So Lisa, what do you see as being the biggest challenge for high school students in terms of them communicating their mental health needs to their school staff and administrators?
I think the biggest challenge is there's still some stigma, as we all know, surrounding mental health issues. So I think our students worry about what others are going to think of them if they ask for help or if they have a mental health concern. I think one of the most important things in our schools is relationships. So to build those relationships with our students, make sure that they do feel that they have a trusted adult that they can go to. We're constantly training our staff, and we've been working on doing presentations with our students as well to let them know that, seek that one person out, one or more people in the building that you do have that relationship with, that you feel comfortable with talking to. I've heard students say they feel like their concerns are not being heard or their needs are not being met. So we as schools, and staff in the schools, we really need to work on how we are building our relationships with our kids so that they do feel comfortable, and as well as educating our students and letting them know that it is okay to ask for help.
Yeah, that's so important, Lisa. In fact, I'm sure you're aware, and many of those in our audience aware, that the MHA, the Mental Health Advocates of Western New York, which is actually where I'm employed, we have a program called Just Tell One. And Just Tell One does just that. It is actually focused on having the idea of finding a trusted adult for a young person to talk to if they feel they have a concern that needs to be addressed. How about you, Anne? What do you think about this question?
Well, I think what I see in doing this for 20 plus years in helping families to link their students up with counseling services or any type of mental health intervention when it's necessary, I think what I see is a lot of fear of the unknown. When you're dealing with your physical health, that's something tangible they can see. But when you're dealing with the mental health, it's something you can't see. And because it's not well understood, I think the fear is there. And also in regards to the stigma, I also think, kids feel that same way. Like, is there something wrong with me? They don't want something wrong with them. And so a fear of facing that, I think, creates more of the stigma as well. And again, on the parents' part too, not understanding why their child's feeling this way or why they're going through this. They want to know a reason and why they're having. If you break a bone, you know why they broke that bone. But when it deals to their mental health, you don't a lot of times know why they're feeling or experiencing what they're experiencing. So it's much more difficult to face. And I think that circumvents and creates that cycle of stigma. It's not easy to face it. So a lot of times that blind ignorance is created. Like, if I don't see it, then I don't have to deal with it. So that's what I see a lot of times, especially when I'm dealing with parents.
That's a very interesting point. And in fact, you talk about the fear and stigma, they kind of go hand in hand, right? And the other thing I've noticed also is that when they talk about stigma and young people, there's this idea that, well, what if it's happened for the first time? They don't even know what it is. And they don't know why they feel that way. They don't know what's going on. How about you, Olive? Have you noticed that? Maybe, I know you're kind of open about your own journey. Can you relate to this at all?
Yes, for sure. Both of the things that you two talked about, I resonate very deeply with, and I know the students at Hamburg High School do too. As you know, I did a survey throughout the high school. We got about like a quarter of the school's participation in it, and those two things are something I saw very, that happened a lot. And the response is that people don't feel comfortable enough to talk to the people around them about how they're feeling, confusion with what's going through their head and not knowing why they're feeling this way. Another thing that I saw that was very prominent was people not having a safe place at home where they feel like they can express that to their family, or maybe, it's coming from their family. That's the reason why they're dealing with these issues. And so they have this fear that if they reach out at school, it's going to, come back to bite them when they go home. So not feeling the safety, not having that safety net to be able to come forward and talk to someone, because I feel like that might hurt them later, even more than it's already hurting them now.
That's a really good point about that fear of having come back to, bite them, and then, not wanting to go to someone at school for that reason. Actually, so I want to actually go to you, Anne, on that, because you are, of course, with the Family Support Center, and I'm sure you are almost in the middle of these conversations, right? You might have students that might come to you after all and say, well, I don't want my parents to find out, or or you might have a concern that you've seen with a student that you might need to notify a parent. How do you handle that situation? What do you do in those situations? So there might be people watching that might want to know that information.
Well, here in Lancaster with our Family Support Center, it's really a team approach here. I work very closely with all of our school social workers, our school counselors, the school psychologists, so that when there is a need that arises for a student with concerns to mental health, the Family Support Center is the conduit to being able to reach out and seek services for these students. It does help to alleviate a lot of the unknown that's out there. Again, as I say, if you break a bone, you know you go to an orthopedic person. If you're dealing with mental health issues, you don't know where to go to. Who's good? Who deals with this type of issue? Is that student going to be able to connect on the same level with a therapist? Is it going to be a good match? So from my perspective in running the Family Support Center, that's my job, and being able to kind of remove a lot of those barriers to students and families seeking out those services. So, if you're creating a team approach within the schools to help kids, it appears to be a more effective way to approach that. And kids, when students feel like their voice is heard by the staff in school and being able to link up and get the help that they need, it does facilitate students getting the help that they need, and their voices being heard. That's kind of what I've experienced over the years, because I've often hear parents say, well, I don't know where to go to, who's good, where should I go to? So our team approach really has been an effective way.
I like that team approach. It's almost the idea of it takes a village, right? You hear about
Absolutely.
that message.
Absolutely.
And so, but that's where you take the team from the school, you try to engage the parents, and then, all these people involved really can help that youth and that student to get the service they need. So Lisa, I know you, of course, in your role, as a consultant working with teachers and educators, what do you see as far as being that line of communication? How do you encourage maybe parents to talk to their children, talk to their student about what might be going on? Because a lot of times I've had the question asked to me, how do you even ask someone if they're having a problem? How do you broach that without maybe having them get all defensive or try deflecting the problem?
Right. Well, like Ann mentioned earlier, it's really important to take the team approach, and it's really important to encourage communication between the school and the families. That again depends on the relationship, and it's so important to foster those relationships between the school and the families. So we always encourage open communication, but we need to meet the parents where they're at. We need to meet the students where they're at. So we can't just come and say, hey, this is going on, you need to do this. We need to talk to the parents first and say, this is what we're seeing. This is what your child has brought up at school, or what we're noticing in school, and let them ask, questions, and ask them, what do you need right now? And it's the same with talking to students, and when we encourage the parents to talk with their students, just to be open and honest, and really just get that open dialogue, give time, listen to what the student needs or what the family needs at that time.
Listening is certainly important. That's I think one of the biggest things I've learned over time. In fact, I have two daughters myself, and they're adults, but going through that phase of adolescence, sometimes we think we're good listeners, but we really aren't as good listeners as we think we are.
Yeah, we like to give a lot of advice, but we really, like Olive mentioned too, sometimes the student doesn't know what they're going through, like, why am I feeling this way? It can be scary for parents and students alike. So it's really so important to meet the students and the families where they're at, ask them, what do you need? What questions do you have? And don't be afraid to ask them questions that, some people think, even thinking about suicide or disturbing thoughts that a student might have, it's okay to ask a student, are you talking about suicide? Are you thinking about suicide? Or, self-harming behaviors, things like that. We can't be afraid to ask those questions.
Absolutely.
Also, too,
Yeah,
could
go
I
ahead.
just say too that a lot of times when I'm talking with students and or parents, everybody wants to know the why question. Why am I feeling this? Why is this happening? But I try to redirect and say it's really not the why right now, but is what can we do one thing to move forward to try to help? And that seems to move the conversation forward, and you don't get stuck in that cycle of the why. And it gives the family hope, and it gives the student hope that there is a way to deal with this and handle this, and there are options out there, and it opens up that conversation.
That's excellent. So if you're just tuning in, I'm Karl Shallowhorn from the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition. I'm joined by Ann Mansin, Director of Family Support at the Lancaster High School, and also Lisa Benedetto, licensed clinical social worker, and Oliveluneske, student from Hamburg High School. So Olive, I'm going to go back to you. And you talked about your survey, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into that, because you really, wow, that's quite an effort to put a survey out to your whole high school and to compile the results and to really use it as a measuring stick of where your school is in terms of the overall mental health. If you had to just say, and this is, I think, let me just say, first of all, I think maybe what you're seeing at your school, Olive, might be indicative of many schools across the country. I mean, of course, yours is a snapshot, but so in terms of what you saw and some of the things that were revealed, can you tell a little bit more?
Yeah, so let me just, so that everybody has a clear idea of, how many people we had, what kind of, vision we had of how the whole school feels. There's roughly about 1,159 students at HHS, Hamburg High School, but we had like a quarter of those, people. So we had like 436 responses. So like you said, this is a snapshot of, how students are feeling, but from the range of results that I compiled, I think that this, goes for a lot of students. This is how a lot of students feel. And, speaking of this being a very popular thing for these students to deal with, and this, applying to a lot of students at this age, I think that kind of makes us feel as though it's less important because so many of us deal with such similar issues as each other. Feeling like I got a lot of responses that said they feel like they're faking it, and to quote a student, they said, nothing's diagnosed, but, it's just normal, I guess. Just because it's something that so many of us deal with doesn't necessarily mean that it shouldn't be taken as seriously, or, you shouldn't care for yourself enough to reach out to someone about it. And I think that a lot of students just feel like administration doesn't care. If they do go to someone, they're just going to tell their parents and they're going to get in trouble. Because like I said, a lot of it is coming from their home. They don't feel like somebody's going to take them seriously, to listen to them, and to work towards trying to help them. There's a lot of students that have friends that they're trying to help overcome this, but they're also trying to overcome these issues at the same time. And so trying to, look out for each other, but also look out for yourself at the same time, something that a lot of students are struggling with. We had a lot of students say that they deal with anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, eating disorders. These are all things that we don't even know that much about at this age. And so trying to reach out for help, but at the same time know what you're reaching out for help for, and like trying to, accurately explain that to the people, whether that's a teacher or maybe it's your family or, whoever it is, your friends, trying to illustrate that for each other. It's another struggle that a lot of people expressed in our survey.
That's a lot. That's a lot to unpack there in
It
terms of
is, yeah.
what the message you're getting. So it's interesting because it sounds to me the message that you've heard pretty loud and clear. One of those, like you said, that many students are afraid to go to administrators and teachers. As was mentioned before, I think Ann and Lisa kind of references the idea they're afraid it's going to get back to their parents. But
Yeah.
also, we know, and frankly, some of the problems do stem from home. I mean, not to say all cases, but there may be things happening there that they feel there might be some repercussions. So, I just want, before I go too deeply into that, I want to just get a question. If anybody has a question from the audience, you can feel free to type it into the comments, and we'll be sure to try to address it. But I just one that I want to ask Ann and Lisa, what strategies are being used to educate faculty and staff so they're more informed about mental health issues so they can be more understanding when they encounter them? So maybe Lisa, if you'd be willing to.
I can say in
go ahead.
Lancaster schools through our staff development days, we always offer a variety of workshops and things revolving around mental health in students, but also our own mental health and handling our own maybe issues that we're dealing with and how to overcome them so that you're available for the students as well. I can say that over the years, trainings around mental health have definitely increased in our schools. Been doing this for 20 plus years, and I think we've done a good job in all school districts of normalizing talking about mental health and normalizing doing trainings around mental health to ingrain that in the culture of our school. So from our school district, I know staff development has been developed around mental health issues.
How about you,
Yeah.
Lisa?
Yeah, we too have been doing a lot of staff development. We are using a program called Suicide Safety for School Staff. It's from the Suicide Prevention Center of New York. And we've trained all of our support staff on that, but also the goal is to train all of our staff. So we've also trained a lot of teachers and regular staff too. And this teaches what to look for, not just in cases of suicidal students, but mental health in general. So when you notice a change in a student's behavior, mood, or their actions, what to do, who to reach out to. It really talks about doing like a warm handoff. So, hey, I've noticed this about my student, and here, we need some additional support for that student. So we've really been working hard to educate our entire district about what to look for and what to do. And we too have also been offering staff self-care kind of things, how to take care of yourself, because obviously during the pandemic, things have been even more stressful than usual. And, teachers and staff are up against a lot more. And that whole working from home and, the virtual learning and just all the stresses, staff shortages, things like that we've all been going through. So we've also been doing a lot of staff development on self-care too, and our own mental health, and making sure that staff is aware of what resources are available for not only their students and families, but for themselves too.
That's excellent. And I just have to make mention for the where I work, the Mental Health Advocates of West New York. I'm the director of youth programs, and we offer presentations to schools, middle schools and high schools for teachers and faculty and administration, which engages basically one of our YPAs, myself, going in and speaking to the teams about mental health, what we can do to help their students. As well as the Mental Health Association of New York State, Mahaney's, has the School Education Resource Center, which provides free resources for schools. That's another great resource. So this is for Olive. Another question came through. What changes would you like to see in school that would improve services, resources for you and your peers? So what changes would you like to see?
I think that it would be more enhancements rather than changes. Because as I was preparing for this meeting, I was, finding out more about what we had in our school, that was the resources that were offered that I didn't know about beforehand. And I think the biggest issue is that people students don't know that there are groups that are in place. They're just starting out, or they're not big yet, but people are trying. There's administration and teachers that care, and students need to be made aware of that, because according to the survey, a lot of people, there was a question that said, what resources do you know that exist in your school? And there's an extremely alarming amount of people saying nothing, which isn't necessarily the case. So we need to make sure that, it's so that everybody knows that people are caring and people are trying to help us. Another thing is that I think that teachers just maybe need to be more perceptive to the signs of issues in kids, because I think that one of the biggest issues is that either kids don't know where to get for help, where to go for help, or they don't want to. For whatever reason that may be, they're not comfortable, or they don't know how, or maybe, they don't see a way out. So they're just stuck in this loop. So maybe if teachers were more perceptive to the signs of mental health in different students, and being able to point that out if a student isn't able to reach out for help themselves, to a certain extent, I think that would be really helpful, so that kids don't feel like it's, all up to them to get better, because that's the hardest thing, is wanting to get better and putting in the effort to get better. So if somebody is in your corner looking out for you and just making sure that you're okay without you having to constantly be looking and searching for someone who is going to help you, I think that would be really helpful. I think students would appreciate that when somebody finally notices them.
Well, certainly, I think you made a good point too, where just letting your peers, the other students in the school know, okay, where can I get help here in the school? Like what's available, because they don't know. That was pretty clear, you said, and also letting the teachers give them a better idea through the education which is being provided, as was mentioned by Anne, to the different schools. Let them know what's available. Let them know what they can do and how they can learn. That's what one of the programs, Youth Mental First Aid, that's another program that's offered. That's what that does. And there's other programs available where you can learn to identify what are the signs to look for when someone might be struggling. So we have another question. This is for Lisa and Anne. As a parent, should you reach out to your child's primary doctor first, or go to the school counselor? The situation can be overwhelming as a parent, and they will want a path to receiving help. So what do? Do you go to the pediatrician first? That's a question that many people have.
It's really what you're most comfortable with, or how serious the issue is, how urgent it is. There's many different ways to get help. So, and, I'm sure Anne would agree too. It's great for parents to reach out to the school support staff, but the pediatrician is also an option, or even any community agencies calling, crisis services, Spectrum Cares. Those are not only for emergencies. You can also call those numbers just if you have a question or you need a referral or things like that. So it's really what you're most comfortable with, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What do you think about
Oftentimes when I do get a referral for a family, I ask, have you notified, have you been in contact with the pediatrician? Because sometimes I like to say, do it simultaneously. You can contact the pediatrician and contact the school at the same time, and have them work hand in hand in seeing what's going on with the students.
Yeah.
Again, the team approach.
Yeah, it's important to keep those lines of communication open. We always recommend to parents to sign those releases of information, so doctors, schools, and any community agencies involved can be in contact, so that we can all work together to get the best support for the students.
Once again, it takes a village.
Yes.
So once again, if you're just tuning in, I'm Karl Shallowhorn from the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition. I'm here with Anne Mansin, Director of Family Support Center at Lancaster High School. Oliveluneske from Highmark High School, she's a student, and also Lisa Benedetto, licensed clinical social worker. Remember, you can visit our website at letstalkstigma.org to take the pledge to end stigma. Also, if you're connected with a business, organization, or faith community, you can become an organizational member of the Anti-Stigma Coalition. You can find information for this under our members tab on the website. Another question. These are coming through great. So if you have a question, feel free to type them into the comment section. This question is, many celebrities and sports figures have spoken about their own mental health challenges. Does this have an impact on students more willing to come forward? I'm going to ask all of that. So, of course, you see people like, of course, we saw over the summer, certainly Simone Biles, who was certainly one of the biggest people in terms of and I wouldn't even call her a celebrity. She's just basically an incredible person, but she's well known. And also Naomi Osaka, and then we have Meghan Markle and others. What do you think about folks like that coming forward? Does that help?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously that wasn't something that was asked in the survey, so I don't have a list of responses for that one. But if I was just going off of what I know from my peers and, being a high schooler myself, I think that seeing that in the media is definitely a shift in our culture. I think that it's more like over an overarching difference rather than, very specific, because I don't think that people are, thinking like, oh, like I saw Simone Biles do this, like now I feel comfortable. But I think it just creates a more comfortable community, like just knowing that this isn't something that everyone is hush hush about. It's something that just seeing that, little hints of hope throughout your life, maybe some of your other friends are coming out about how they feel, seeing it in the media that you consume. So yeah, I think that I would say that it is helping people and creating a shift in our culture as teenagers.
What do you think, Anne?
I would say it almost gives people permission to start to talk about it now, that it's normal. And if it's out there on the TV, if it's in the media, if it's in with these sports figures or famous people, that it's okay, that it's a normal thing. And I think that's, to get over the stigma, we need to normalize that mental health is okay, that we all need to focus on our mental health, whether it be an issue with our mental health or it be our strengthening our mental health. And that starts at a very young age. And if even young kids, if it's ingrained in the environment, it becomes a normal thing to talk about. And I think if it becomes a normal thing to talk about, it's going to be a normal thing to deal with. And that'll make it easier in going forward when we do have concerns about our mental health.
And how about you, Lisa?
I agree. That's what I was thinking, is it really normalizes it and makes it okay to talk about. One of the trainings we do with our students is called It's Real. It's by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, but they have some famous people in the presentation, and the kids are really receptive to it. They're like, hey, I know this singer, or I know this band, or I know this actress or actor. And one of the campaigns is called seizetheawkward.org. And that's really helpful. Olive, you might want to jot that down. It's great for teens. They have little ads in there that talk about, it's okay to talk about mental health, but they have a little like funny spin on it. But there's also some people that the teenagers recognize, some YouTubers and people like that. We may not know them, but when I was showing it to the students, they're like, hey, I know that person, or I know that person. And I think it really helps them feel comfortable with talking about it, and again, normalizing it. And, it's okay to talk about it, and look at all these people that are dealing with it and want to offer support and an insight into it.
That's awesome. I love that. I love the name of that website, Seize the Awkward.
Oh,
Because that's what
great.
sometimes people feel. These conversations may be seemingly awkward, but if you could take advantage to take that opportunity to raise issue and talk about that and normalize it, like you're saying, that makes all the difference in the world. So another question from the audience. These are great questions coming through, so keep them coming, folks. This is wonderful. Another question is, I feel relationships are one of the most important needs. Results of the survey indicated that their guidance counselor is not who they would choose to go to. Why is that? What could be done to identify a better match? So I'll start with you, Olive, from what you're seeing in your school, and then maybe check in with Anne and Lisa to see if they have any comments. So what do you think why that might be?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many responses about people not feeling comfortable talking to their counselors. Like that was the biggest consensus that was the same. out of all of the questions. I can read a few responses that people said, some direct quotes. They said they don't care about students' mental health. They just want to feed them pointless assignments every day so they can give us a number every 10 weeks that determines if we are successful or not. I think that goes more for teachers. But somebody else said that I know that there's counselors, but I'm not really sure they really help. They mainly focus on school problems. So I think the main thing that people are feeling is that school counselors, guidance counselors are there to help you switch your schedule if you don't want to take a class anymore. And that's it. I have, had experience going to counselors and trying to talk about something other than a school schedule and it not really panning out as I was hoping and not really being helpful. So that's why I was not relieved, but kind of comforted in knowing that so many other students feel this way. So it's not just me who feels, that there's a lack of help going on in that region where you would think that a school counselor would be the perfect person to go to for this. But, I think it says like 290 students answered with this same feeling of not being able to go to their guidance counselors. And, referring to the second part of Carl's question, I don't know exactly what we could do to identify a better match to solve this issue. I mean, I'm not a school administrator. I don't know how it works, I think that would maybe be a better question for Ann and Lisa for the second half, but I can definitely say that that is a big issue from the students.
So let's go to Lisa. What do you think, Lisa? A lot of the work you do, I'm sure you're seeing some things.
Yeah, I think in regards to the guidance counselor not being who they would choose to go to, again, it's also a good fit. So just like if you go to therapy at an agency, maybe this therapist isn't a good fit for you. Maybe this counselor isn't a good fit for you. In the Buffalo schools, we have student support teams. So we have a school social worker, a school psychologist, and guidance counselors. So it gives us a little more variety. We also have agencies within our schools that provide mental health services. So there are some more options. But I think what's important too is to work on educating our staff, guidance counselors, everybody, teachers, that relationships are really important for our kids. And it's important to know that even if you're not a school counselor or a school social worker or a school psychologist, it's okay as a teacher, cafeteria person, bus driver, to ask the students, are you okay? And if the answer they give you is concerning or they need more support, it's important for our staff to know how to refer them for that extra support in order to find a good fit for them. So I think a lot of it is still about education and building those relationships.
Yeah, I agree. And in regards to school counselors, everybody has to remember what everyone's role is. Initially, school counselors were for the academics, so that there was somebody that had a voice for students and making sure the academics were taken care of. The second part of school counselors is also being there to support students if they had some emotional concerns. But again, it's about the educating too. I mean, we here in Lancaster are fortunate. We do have a number of social workers in our district. And so that if a student isn't comfortable talking to their school counselor, they can always go to the school social worker or the school psychologist. So again, it's that team approach. But helping students to be educated about that and knowing that there's somebody that they can turn to talk to, that if it's not the school counselor, there is somebody, and having that relationship with your school counselor for that school counselor say, well, we have this school social worker that you can go talk to, or the school psychologist. There's always someone that we can link you up with, and making sure that students understand that there is somebody that we can link you with to be able to talk to.
And I think that's huge. I think that's one of the keys here that we're looking at, right? And I think I understand, because I've heard the same concern that people said, oh, well, the guidance counselors, all they do is academics, and they don't understand mental health. Well, that may not necessarily be true, but the reality is that students don't understand that. So we need to let the students know and that there's someone available, even if it isn't the guidance counselor, but the guidance counselor may know who that is, whether it be an internal resource, like we said, like a social worker or psychologist that's working with the district, or even external, or through an agency. So we do know that a lot of this is about communication. We're talking about communication, right? This is a big part right there. Understanding the lines of communication, understanding how the messaging is being put across. Let me ask a question, Olive, in that respect. How does your school, and maybe Olive, Olive, you can relay this information. How do your schools relay the information to your students about mental health? Like, what messaging is given? Is it through announcements? The portals. What kind of information? How do they get that information, Olive?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple different ways that our school has tried. I have not heard, I mean, this is just from my experience. I've only been at the high school, from September until now. So I can't speak for everything that they've ever tried to do. Only what I know from what I can remember. I know that I think that a health class inside of the school did this as a project. They have different QR codes with different links about different disorders that students might be dealing with, and those are all posted in a hallway in the school. I'm not sure if that would be considered as like a thing that the school is trying to do to help students. I just know that that's there. I think that word of mouth has been a big one that has been helpful. Just students telling each other, oh, this teacher or this social worker has really helped me. I have not heard anything on the announcements. There are a few posters. I've seen a poster about a peer counseling group. But yeah, that's really about it. I mean, it's not, like I said, I think that we need more advertisement on what the school is offering, because the advertising that I have seen has not either paid off or isn't enough, or I don't know, it's lacking a little bit.
Okay. What do you say, Ann?
In our district, I know the morning announcements. There's been several different initiatives. I know as a district as a whole, we have a mental health committee now, which never existed before, but within the last 2 years, we developed a district-wide mental health committee, so that we're bridging the gap between elementary to our intermediate, to our middle school, to our high school. So it's more of a holistic approach, the whole district, with the initiatives. But again, we always struggle with how do you get the word out? So the morning announcements, the posters around the school, school groups doing different initiatives in the lunch periods. I noticed that there's a lot of things that go on during lunch periods. So again, it's that constant communication, check and connect. What did work? What didn't work? Including students so they have a voice. We need to hear from the students. Adults see things differently than the students do. So you students need to be at the table when things are being discussed, and what worked for you, what didn't work for you, so that you have ownership in that. And when students feel like they have ownership in what's being developed for their best interest, it is more impactful for them.
Right. Well, that makes plenty of sense, right? Because if you're helping to make the decisions, then you're more likely to want to take part in whatever those ultimate directives are, right? So that's another thing. So Lisa, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, similar to Ann, we've noticed great involvement with we have almost 60 different schools in our district, so each one is a little different. But there are some student-led groups that are involved in mental health awareness. So it can be posters in the school, announcements, things like that. Health classes do some curriculum about it. And when they do curriculum about the mental health, they talk about what supports are available within the school community. When we do the presentations, we're always talking about the supports available, who to reach out to. I know the first few days of school, our student support teams get in front of the students and talk about, who they are, where they're located, how to get in touch with them. And within our district too, we also have wellness committees. So the wellness committees do include students on those in those groups, and we're also working with, again, staff and students there. So
I do
Yeah,
have
and
to
I
say,
think,
over the years, mental health has been implemented in the health classes more so than they have been in past years. And they utilize a lot of the community services that are out there to supplement their lessons that they're doing within this health classes. So it definitely expanded over the years, which is a good thing.
well, I think in 2017 there was a mandate coming from the executive chamber in New York State that mental health education be offered in schools, public schools, grades K through 12. So that's now a mandate. It has to be taught, and so that was a huge step ahead and step forward. Some schools were already doing it. Other schools maybe not so much, but now they have to, which is great. I have a question too. This goes to perhaps Lisa and Anne. Your schools, do you offer mental health first aid training? There's a question that came from the audience for you, like youth mental health first aid training for the teachers.
Yes, I know we just started that last year. A bunch of staff were trained in youth mental health first aid, so it is being implemented in some schools throughout the district.
That's great. And how about you, Anne?
Same here. Yes, we've started to do that.
That's awesome. Just so the viewers know, Youth Mental Health First Aid is a national program that's operated through the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. I'm actually an instructor in both the youth and adult curriculums myself. And what it does is it helps participants and teachers and administrators and staff understand signs and symptoms of mental illness, how to know how to respond in a crisis or non-crisis situation. It's a great program as well. So also now I want to actually get back to you, Lisa, as far as signs and symptoms. We know that we talked about this before, what perhaps teachers should be looking for, or even parents. What would you say some of the things to look for in a student if you feel there might be something going on?
Well, we always empower the parents with letting them know, obviously, you know your kids best. And, your teachers and staff get to know the kids pretty well too, because they see them almost every day. So it's mostly when you notice a change in their mood or their behavior. We look at a couple different areas. Talking, their talking points. So if they are engaging in a lot more negative talk than they normally do, like, I don't want to be here anymore, or nothing matters anymore, comments like that, feeling hopeless. It's important to ask questions around that. Tell me more about these feelings. I don't normally hear you talking like this. Another area to pay attention to is their behavior. Are they harming themselves? Are they taking more risks than usual? As we know, the teenage years, there is increased risky behavior because they feel like they're, invincible at that age. But if this is something out of the ordinary, they're taking more risks, they're not acting like themselves, maybe they're more irritable than usual, or seem more distant than usual. And that goes along with the mood. If their mind seems like they're elsewhere, they're being, they don't want to be as social as usual, spending more time in their room. Again, your kids best. So teenagers do separate themselves more and maybe spend more time in their bedrooms away from family or friends, than usual. But if it's more than usual, they don't want to be with anybody, they don't want to do anything. Their mood might seem more anxious, or they can't relax. Anything that's out of the ordinary for your kid or your student, that's when it's important to really take the time to listen and, let them know, that you're there for them and that you want to get them extra support, and just ask those questions for open communication. Just say, are you okay? What's going on? I've noticed something different, and let them tell you. The three magic words we talk about are tell me more, and just make sure that we're listening and not turning them away or disagreeing or minimizing what they're saying. A lot of times we'll have parents or teachers say to us, oh, they just want attention, or they're manipulating. Okay, they might be wanting attention, but they want attention for a reason. So let's find out more. Let's ask more questions about why are they seeking out attention? Why are they saying these things or acting this way? Because there's something underlying there that, we need to take seriously.
That's wonderful. And of course, I think another thing to look for is just a change in grades, right? A drop in grades is always an indicator to look for students and for parents. So Olive, I'm going to ask you the last question, then we're going to have some last comments. So if you had one piece of advice for your fellow high school students, whether it be at Hamburg or any high school that might be watching, who wants to raise their voice and become an advocate like you are, what would that be? How would you encourage them to be an advocate? Because we need more people like you.
Well, thank you. Let me think. The biggest thing that I would say would be just to look around at the students around you and notice what is lacking in your community and try to, imagine what you can do to change it. Imagine the world that you want to live in, and whether it's, getting a friend to help you with that, but just taking that initiative to just try to imagine something different and something new for the people that are coming after you. Just follow where your heart leads you, I suppose. Yeah.
And I have a little follow-up, of course, about you. What are your plans? What do you plan to do with all this great work? I mean, you're 14 and you're already putting out surveys on mental health. You're talking about this stuff. Are you planning on pursuing this for yourself, maybe as a career in kind of way?
I've considered it. I've gone back and forth with a lot of, I'm a dancer and that's my life. So, I don't know. I've gone back and forth with, do I want to be a counselor? Do I want to be a lawyer? Do I want to do this? So I'm still bouncing back and forth between things. So I could not tell you that, honestly. But
I guess
that's
a fair question at this point.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's great. Well, all I can say is you're off to a great start no matter which way you're going. It sounds like you have a very bright future ahead of you. So
that means a lot. Thank you very much.
So I guess the last moment of time we have about maybe 7 or 8 minutes left. I'm going to ask all of you to just give some closing comments, maybe some things that perhaps should have been said that you didn't get a chance to say yet, or some last things you would like to share with our audience. So, Anne, let's start with you. What would you like to share to kind of wrap things up from your perspective?
Well, in regards to having more olives in our world, I would say to students, you have a voice, be a voice, and use it. And know that there is always somebody out there that is going to listen to your voice. And the more it's talked about and the more that we spread the word, I think we will eventually live in a world where it's normal to talk about mental health.
Excellent. And how about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I want to say great work, Olive. We do need more students like you. We need more people like you. But recently I was doing a presentation in some classrooms about mental health, and the students were very receptive to the information. A lot of it, we talk about like how we need to treat our mental health just like our physical health, and that it's just as normal to take care of a broken leg as it is to take care of, our mental health. And if we're struggling with, any type of concerns there. So with that being said, the students had said to us, why haven't we had this presentation before? Where have you been? So I think the students are open and willing and receptive to this information. And I think it's just so important for us to keep that dialogue going and to just keep open lines of communication. Like Anne kept saying, it takes a team. So we need to keep those lines of communication open between the parents, the schools, the community, and the students, and include all of them in this discussion on how we can offer the support and normalize it as much as possible.
Right. I think the key word is open communication, normalize. That's what we want to do, right?
Yeah.
That's really critical. And Olive, how about you? Any last comments from you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you guys for asking me to be a part of this and for letting me use my voice on your guys' platform. I also just want to say that, to any students who may be watching in the future or are watching right now, perhaps, that your mental health doesn't define you. Only you can define who you are. Like you said, you have a voice and you can use it. And, life is always evolving. Life is always changing. And how you feel right now is not how you will feel forever. And just to, keep, pushing those boundaries and keep pushing people to listen, because you deserve to be listened to and you're important. That's all.
I think that message of things keep evolving, things keep changing, and things don't stay the same forever. That is a huge message that I think we all need to understand, because even myself, I know I have times when I think, oh my gosh, things are just horrible, but that might be for that moment or that day, but
Mhm.
certainly things could get better. We all know that. So, actually, so we actually have a few minutes left. I don't want to wrap up, for our full hour. I want to give the full hour's time. So I just want to kind of do a quick COVID question. And maybe this is for all of you real briefly. How do you see COVID affecting everybody? We haven't really talked about COVID. Maybe Anne's, how do you see COVID affecting your students?
Exponentially, I've had a huge increase in referrals for kids with anxiety. It's this COVID thing is the unknown. It's ever evolving and things are changing, and so many different things are being thrown at us. And as students, it's difficult. You have to rely on your coping skills, your managing skills, and I see a lot of those things are not developed as healthily as possible, to help these kids work through this. And even as adults, it's that unknown that we all are dealing with that has created a definitely increase in anxiety in a lot of people.
Lisa, how about you?
I agree. We've seen an increase in anxiety. And like Anne said, I think it stems from, we don't know from day to day where we're going to be. Are we going to be in person? Are we going to be remote? Am I going to have to quarantine? There's just a lot of different issues. But I think a lot of what this pandemic showed us too is that kids need that individualized attention. Some kids did okay with the at-home instruction. Some kids are doing okay. Some kids were completely different and needed a ton of support and really struggled during this. So I think it really just points out that, we still need all this individualized support, whether it's academic or social emotional.
And Olive, how about you? What are you seeing maybe with your peers? And how about you? How's COVID affected you?
Yeah, COVID hit me pretty hard, as it did everyone. I would just say, for one, I did not enjoy remote learning, and I cannot imagine going back. I do not want to imagine going back to remote learning. I know a lot of people feel that way too, whether it's, because they don't have a good home environment to do this work in, or they don't thrive in that type of learning environment. Or maybe, on the latter, they do, and going to school brings them anxiety, and so this was a breath of fresh air for them. Just knowing that everyone learns differently, and that whether it was hard for you or whether it was easier for you, whatever it was, that there is a way to figure out what works for you and to find that and to really thrive in the environment that helps you.
Yeah, I like that. Find the ability to thrive. That's what we really want everyone to do, and all of our students to do. So thank you for that closing comment there, Olive. That was very appropriate, a way to kind of wrap things up. So as we want to remind all of you that you could take the pledge to end stigma by going to our website at letstalkstigma.org. If your organization would like to join us, you can find that out on our members tab. Together, we can certainly make this happen. Once again, I'd like to thank our panelists, Anne Mansin, Lisa Benedetto, and Oliveluneske for their participation. I'd also like to thank the folks behind the scenes, certainly Mike Telesco, who pushes all the buttons and is behind the curtain, as they say, from Telesco Creative Group, for all of his work. Matt Smith, chair of the Anti-Stigma Coalition Outreach Committee, and Carol Doggett from the Mental Health Advocates of West New York, and Karen Karaszewski from KKPR Buffalo for her support. She also coordinates our newsletter. So you can go to our website, sign up for our taking the pledge and get the newsletter that way, so you can see all the great work that Karen does. Be sure to tune in to our next Facebook Live on March 16th. We'll be focusing on state of stigma, our mental health concerns contributing to healthcare worker burnout. So be sure to tune in on March 16th at noon for that. So on behalf of the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition, until next time, I'm Karl Shallowhorn. Be safe and be well.